So I'm stoked for this one. This will be a lot of fun. So if you guys have been around me and Kevin for any amount of time, you know Pablo's name. It's popped up. He's emceed the Badass Business Summit for us, and the dude is just one of those guys you want to hang out with, man. He's always the life of the fucking party. Randomly breaks out in karaoke sessions and all kinds of fun. So I'm really stoked to hang out with him on this one and talk about, you know, how to build communities, why build communities, and all that shit. So, Pablo, get us rocking and rolling, my friend. Why the hell would somebody want to build a community in the first place?
I just want to say you're excited. Feel these nipples.
And that's the way to start it.
That's how we start. That's how we start.
That's never been said on this podcast ever.
Dude, that's an old quote from like an old, like super goofy. It was like John Turturro's first movie ever. Anyways, it was called Brain Donors. Why would anybody want to build a community? I think I think we are all very used to this idea of like having a network, having a community. It's the ultimate moat, man. Like if you have access to a bunch of people that know you, know your value, you know their value, and you are able to connect those dots, you're never going to go hungry. You're never going to need a job. You're always going to have clients. And at the end of the day, at one point about 8 years ago, when my brother passed away and I was sitting around the Catholic Church and 1,200 people showed up to his funeral, I realized that community is the ultimate solver of churn, right? Like no matter what I felt about the Catholic Church, since I've been a teenager, I looked around and I saw these people and I saw the value that they brought to my life. And I knew that no matter, you know, what the religious institution piece of it, I could never leave these people, right? Because people will change jobs, products, services, whatever they do, they'll change that way quicker than they're going to change friends. So if you're the person bringing people together, you're going to keep them close to you.
Yeah, I freaking love it. You said a word that I want to understand. You said it's the perfect moat. What do you mean by that?
I mean that I, as a person, have been somebody that always has idolized the guy that knows a guy persona, right? So I've always built towards that. And what I have found is that when you are a guy that knows a guy, girls that knows a girl, you're always needed, man. And you always have access to the things that you need because you will always have somebody in your life. You have some kind of access to the person or the person that knows the person that can open the door. And we all know that, you know, knowledge and skill set is power, man. But at the end of the day, the quickest way to change somebody's life is to put the right relationship in front of them. So if you're able to do that across the boat, I look at it as a moat, as the thing that protects the castle. For me in my career, the network that I have around me, the community that I have around me has been the thing that has protected my income, protected my ability to make my own decisions, protected my options to do whatever things I need to do that make me happy.
Fucking love that. Love that.
Yeah, the whole concept of, you know, community, it has such a better feeling than how the term networking has gone. And that's really, you know, when you're in a community, that's really what it is. It's a giant network. But, you know, there's been organizations that have taken the whole networking thing and just made it feel really slimy and impersonable. But the community thing is really cool. And I heard you tell the funeral story at Summit this year. And when I heard you tell that, I immediately thought back to my grandpa's funeral when I was in high school, where literally all the neighboring towns showed up. You know, the church was filled, standing room only. The basement was full of people that were listening to it. There was lines outside of people all there because of Grandpa. And, you know, that was a really powerful image. And because he was a part of a community and had this huge impact on all these people's lives, and they wanted to be there for that event. So, you know, and I think that's what people miss out on, is that part of what a community is. It's, you know, you're not there. It's not just there about you. When you're in a community, it's what you can bring to everyone else. And how are you contributing to those people? And what are you doing to make their world better?
So how does somebody go about building a community? 'Cause I agree. but if I'm starting a business, getting things going, and I know I should have a community, where the hell do I start? What do I do? I mean, I know how I did it, but I mean, I'm assuming, Pablo, you just went out and put on like some maracas and started dancing around until people showed up. But
that is very ethnically accurate, Don.
At least he didn't put you in the fruit basket and doing
the chiquita banana. Yeah,
right.
Man, no, Maracas is right though. Maracas is right. First of all, I want to acknowledge what you said, Kevin. Man, like I heard this this quote this morning, that most people, when they are at the end of your life is generally reduced to 2 dates and a hyphen, right? Like that's what people get remembered by, man. But when I think of my grandfather, when I think of my brother, I think about all the times that we bring him up in conversation still to this day, both of those guys, right? So like, I think it's really, when you think about the legacy piece of it, it gets really, really just really significant. As far as how you build community to me is an exercise of understanding the value of the people around you and putting them in the right place in order for the people that are seeking that value to receive it, right? Like putting people into service of their superpower, which at the end of the day is what really breeds happiness. And I've kind of naturally done that. My first iteration of really building communities purposefully came when I started building these like young professional groups in Miami for different charities, and then started leveraging for my own good business wise. But that aha moment that I had in the church really made me kind of like look at all the similarities between all these different things that I had done. And I realized that to build a community, you need to systematize that idea of sharing value with people. And to do that, when you think of communities, you'll generally find some kind of common language, some kind of ritual where everybody shows up with that giant moment of value exchange. And within that ritual, there's usually a stage, right? There's usually a place where leader of community gets to showcase other people in their community or bring other folks to share value towards that community to each other in a very simplified fashion. So that's what I've looked to implement whenever I build community, right? When we're thinking of businesses and communities, we tend to make the mistake of thinking, well, my community is my Facebook group, or my community is my Slack channel, or my circle thing, right? Or Mighty Networks, whatever it is. But it's really that's just the space, right? That's no different than the actual church itself or the fraternity house, which surprise, surprise, I was a part of. Or
imagine
different.
That.
Who would have thought?
I was too.
Yeah, I believe that too. So
I bet you were the life of the party, Kevin. Go ahead, Pablo.
So it's just the thing that actually builds the community is not the space; it's the systematization of their shared value, man. So, in an abstract fashion, whenever I build a community, I first think of who are the people that I'm trying to serve and what do they care about. And then I think of where am I going to set up a moment that happens on a regular basis, whether it's weekly, every other week, monthly, or quarterly, where I have some kind of stage where I can lead this idea of recognizing somebody's value, that is that thing that people want to talk about, think that they care about, bring them up to that stage and create this opportunity to interact where that person is sharing that value and the people in the audience are able to interact with that value. And, you're able to create these interactions where you are sharing these like multiple vectors of connection, right? Like the difference between an audience and a community is somebody's on a stage and it's all one way, right? It's all one way to the person and back. A community is that same scenario, but the vectors are all pointing towards each other and back and forth and to the people in the audience.
Yeah, you're making me think of like it's almost like a theater in the round. That there's a stage, but everybody's right there and you get to heckle and be a part of the moment. It's more of an overall experience versus the podium with the lectern and you're addressing the crowd type thing. So that's 100%. A cool way to look at it. I really like, I mean, this whole idea of the moat is I'm really digging this thought process. One, because it plays right into my fucking fantasy world of castles and dragons and all this shit, right? Perfect for me. Um, you know, as I look around at Success Champions and the community we've built with everything surrounding Success Champions, I love this idea that these are the people that protect the castle. These are the people that help us let the right people in, keep the wrong people out, type of thing, and help us control the rise and growth of the revolution that we're building. Um, you know, but I know there's a lot of listeners of the show that, they may live kind of small town, USA or small town, wherever they're at. And they sell like an HVAC service maybe, or they're selling, commercial properties and stuff. Why would they ever consider building a community out? I mean, what's the value for somebody that doesn't traditionally think this way to build out a community?
Word of mouth, right? Like, listen, man, I think that if we're talking business specifically, Donnie, and I come from the construction world, right? Like everything that I proved out came from the construction world, and now I'm doing it for tech companies, right? But business is a simple equation. It is cost of client acquisition plus operational costs must be less than lifetime value of your client, and there's a million different things that you can do to decrease cost of client acquisition and increase lifetime value. And most of them add to that operational part of the equation. Word of mouth is something that doesn't, right? That is something that can completely skew that side of the equation in order to make that cost of client acquisition go down, that lifetime value continue to go up without increasing operational costs. And if you have a whole bunch of people,
scale.
Yeah. If you have a whole bunch of people that know who you are, know why you're good, count on you as somebody that is a part of their life, and think of you whenever somebody's looking for you, guess what, man? Your business is going to grow.
Dude, I fucking love that. Go ahead, Kevin.
I was going to say, the interesting thing is that the community you build doesn't have to be HVAC. It doesn't have to be lovers of HVAC. If you're an HVAC company, you can build a community around other things. You can build a community around, I'm in Minnesota, it's winter. So now everyone has their snowmobiles out getting tuned up, ready to go. So you could have a community that's all geared around snowmobiling. You could have a community geared around some other thing where you're now pulling on all these people and you're building value about this shared interest. But now you're the HVAC guy from the snowmobile group.
Yeah.
You are, and we've told this for podcasters, like, well, don't do a podcast about insurance. Do a podcast about your NASCAR racing. If you're a gearhead, do a community about that. If you're into horses, do a community about horses. And now you're building people around that interest, and now you naturally get to know what they do. And you're like, oh, let's call Bill. Bill can totally help us with this. And that's where the business comes from. Everyone, I think, gets stuck that the community has to be around what they do. When it doesn't.
I agree. And to circle back on the idea of scale, everybody thinks about, how do I grow my business, right? How do I grow? And very few people actually think it to the logic thought of, how do I scale this? And, truly the definition of scale is by going 100 to 500x your company without any increase of cost. And I love the fact that you just correlated your community to scale, because that word of mouth doesn't cost you any overhead whatsoever, but it does allow you to increase the volume and chances of revenue coming in. That's a massive way for me to wrap my head around. So thank you for that.
Yeah, man, my pleasure, dude. To Kevin's point, man, I completely agree. Right? Like it's not the most efficient way to build it is never about your product. It's generally about the people that you're trying to serve. If the people that you're trying to serve live in a geographic area, then the community is going to be based around the needs of that area, not your needs. And you're going to be the person that is the expert in your field around that gets to do that. If it is not a geographic area, now you're thinking around like an archetype of a client or something like that, right? Like if I was a national HVAC person, I would, and the people that serve that it behooves me to know, right, are the national general contractors and construction managers that are building big healthcare projects. I would build a community around what these commercial contractors need, right? Like, what are the things in their business, in their life that make them better? How do I become a better project manager? How do I work-life balance of a superintendent? Like, these kinds of different things, I would be bringing in experts to talk to them about it. I would be bringing in people from within them that are really, really good at the things that they do to share with others, and create this like exchange of ideas. That to me is the most efficient way for do it for a business. But to your point, Kevin, like do you guys know what spike ball is?
Yes.
No.
Yeah, it's like a goofy beach game that was invented in Huntington Beach, like in like 2012 or 13 or something like that. I started like a regular spike ball game on Jacksonville Beach on Sunday mornings. It's turned into this community of like 25 dudes that are mostly entrepreneurs and in real estate and a bunch of different things. 3 of those guys have become my clients because we have this ritual where we all get together, and we've now created this like accountability group, and we meet quarterly, and then we went to this like Alabama lake house to spend the weekend together. And these guys have referred me business, become my clients. I've done all these things because it's just like time together, getting to know each other, getting to know where things happen, right? So like it can happen a bunch of different ways, but you're right. It's never about you. When you're trying to build a community, it's really about the people that you're trying to serve. In this group, it happened to be a bunch of dudes that were in their mid-30s that needed something fun to do on a Sunday morning. And it's turned into this like super big thing, kind of like what you guys have built with Success Champions and the Badass Business Summit. Like, to me, it's a very clear example. Like, your networking groups and the way that you organize events are a very clear example of why sharing the stage is so valuable, right? Like, you guys can very easily walk up there and be the experts and just talk down to people, or you can use your stage to go like get Gary Vee to come talk to you or something like that. But what you guys do is you source from within your community the skill sets that people have to bring them up on the stage to share with others, and therefore connecting people to each other, enabling business with each other, and creating these like amazing relationships, because you also are super vulnerable, and vulnerability connects as well, right? So people are up there talking about the problems in their business and the best ideas and best things that they know. And that type of exchange is the palpable thing that happens that keeps me coming back to the Badass Business Summit.
That's awesome, dude. Man, I got to tell you, I truly appreciate you, brother. You've been a hell of an addition to the family. I always love how you show up and pour into us and support us and everything we do. And, I love the opportunities that we get to support you along the way as you continue to build and grow, man. It's just been awesome to know you. Thanks for hanging out with us today, dude, man. It's always fun hanging with you.
Right back at you, dude.
Dude, I love hanging out with Pablo, man. He's always a freaking just an awesome conversation.
Yeah, he always. I'm trying to sort through my thoughts on which one I want to talk about first, because there's a lot of cool things that came into my head talking to him. I think the one I'm going to start with that I loved was this, the concept of what community is actually about. And it drives me nuts. You hear the, words, you gotta create your tribe, and, and all these things that have been going on over the last few years that have really diminished what a community actually is and the purpose behind it and the power behind a community. You talk about your tribe, your network, and whatever other little, names people come up for it to try and monetize it. Pablo gets really right back to it. It's about helping people be successful and about helping people bring value to each other. And it's not about you as the person that leading the community. It's about everyone else.
Yeah. Yeah. No, he's just got a fascinating way to look at it. I mean, Pablo is always in service of others first, right? I mean, that's just his modus operandi. That's what he does. And it doesn't surprise me to see him come across that way. But for me, it was this idea of the moat. I really love that fucking analogy, because I've never looked at the champions inside of Success Champions as the moat that protects us. They're, helping us spread the word, and also, letting the right and wrong people, right people in, wrong people out type thing. It's just a really, really cool concept for me.
Yeah. He's used some of my favorite words too, like systemize, which which I thought was awesome. But he used it in a completely different way, talking about systemizing your shared values.
Yeah.
And I thought that was really cool. And I started looking at how we were doing our meetings for SCN and how we do other things, and we're interacting with members and people in our world. And that's really what we do. We've taken our 6 champions codes, and there's now a system for how they're applied within the community. And I thought that was really cool, that we hadn't really looked at it that way before. So I think it was really cool the way he brought that out.
Yeah. And then the last portion of it that I loved is the idea of how your community allows you to scale, because it's increased that word of mouth, which doesn't cost, drive an increase in cost, which is just such a cool way to look at it. Cause I think, if more people start looking at their businesses from a point of how do I scale, community is a fascinating one to really help you get there.
Yeah. And if you're doing it right, you're building authentic relationships. You're not building relationships that are predicated on the idea that you're going to pitch to these people.
Yeah.
Everyone is there because they want to be, and they're enjoying it, and they're getting value from it. And then buying from you is just bonus.
Yeah, I agree. Now, this was a good one, man. I love hanging out with Pablo. So, guys, if you got any tips, tricks, any values out of this, please make sure you leave us a review wherever you're listening to this. If you're watching on YouTube, please subscribe to the channel and share this out with one person. Comment below and let us know your thoughts and opinions. And feel free to keep sending us in those questions, man. We love catching the emails with questions and advice, or even just feedback if you're liking the show. So, as always, love you, mean it. See you, bye.